All right, guys, back again. Season finale with me, your host, Chris Gray. And this one, I gotta say, took a whole different turn for me than I was expecting it to. The guy we're looking into today is just such a more complex character than I had originally thought. And we're gonna take you down some twists and turns in his backstory that I feel like a lot of other people who've covered this topic haven't really gone into as much. So join me as we bring in this week's guest and take a look at the life and death of Tupac Shakur. All right, and joining us for the season finale is one of my oldest friends, the woke queen herself, Jenn Moriarty.
Hello.
All right, Jen, what you know about Tupac?
Big fan of Tupac, especially conspiracy theories about his death. So I'm real excited to see what this episode has to offer.
All right, let's jump on in. Tupac Amaru Shakur, original name Lassane Parish Crooks, was born June 16, 1971, to mother Afeni Shakur and father Billy Garland. His name was changed at age 1 by his mother because, quote, I wanted him to have the name of revolutionary indigenous people in the world. I wanted him to know he was part of a world culture and not just from a neighborhood. Tupac was surrounded by social activism even before he was born. His mother was involved in the Panther 21 case while pregnant with Tupac, a case that many believe was a racially motivated attempt by the government to frame high-ranking members of the Black Panther Party. The Panther 21 were a group of 21 Black Panther members charged with 156 counts, including 3 planned bombings of the Bronx 44th and Manhattan 24th precincts, as well as the Queens Board of Education office, only the latter being successful.
Just, why target the Board of Education? You know, I mean, the police, I understand. I completely get that. But then, the Board of Education, they're here educating the kids. I mean, is there need for education reform? Yes. But,
I would assume if, and where it stands, these people got acquitted, so, they didn't do this, but, if my rationale in the idea of, them doing, if it was the attack as was portrayed, I guess the idea would be, they feel like the education system had, kind of let them down.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. No, I get that.
That would be my rationale behind it, but Shakur would successfully represent herself, facing 300 years in prison, even interviewing several witnesses, being acquitted of all 156 charges. Tupac and family moved to Baltimore, Maryland, eventually attending the Baltimore School of the Arts, where he studied acting, poetry, and even a little ballet. Tupac thrived at BSA, growing his passion for music and showing an immense natural acting talent. His acting teacher, Richard Pilcher, stated that he believed Tupac, quote, would have become one of our finest film actors, also becoming very popular amongst his fellow students, even befriending a young Jada Pinkett, who would go on to be his lifelong friend, with Tupac being described as someone who, quote, just had a magnetism that defied logic, and everyone was drawn to him.
Facts on facts. Magnetism. Love him. Drawn to him. Love it.
All whilst his home life deteriorated. His mother fell deeper into drug addiction, with Tupac having to bus tables and wash dishes to help with the family's bills during the time he was not in school, reluctantly leaving the school after his junior year when his family moved to Marin City, California in 1988. After finishing high school, Tupac would start his fledgling rap career, first appearing as a feature on Digital Underground's Same Song in February of 1991, releasing his own debut album, Tupacalypse Now, in November of that same year, causing controversy from the beginning when a man in Texas claimed he was influenced by the album's themes of police brutality to shoot a police officer, with then Vice President Dan Quayle even commenting, "There's no reason for a record like this to be released. It has no place in our society."
First of all, it's not his fault that someone shot a police officer. That is a bold accusation.
Yeah, it was like a defense lawyer thing. This is right around the Hipper Gore, Moms Against whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. I don't even know if that was the name of the organization. I'm just making shit up. But
you know what I mean? What? that's absurd. That's like, oh, I was listening to this song on the radio when I crashed my car into someone, so it's their fault.
Yeah,
Like,
like,
what?
I mean, you still chose to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This person's
like you
just
made an
saying
active
stuff.
choice.
Yeah, you can't blame that on someone else.
Yeah, and then like the vice president coming out and being like, this should not be in our society. That's an opinion. That's unnecessary. Like, you
Yeah,
know that meme? It's like, that's your opinion. Like,
but on August 22nd, 1992, Tupac was signing autographs after a performance in Marin City. A conflict occurred, one in which Tupac allegedly drew a .38 caliber revolver, but dropped the weapon on the ground. Tupac claimed the gun was then picked up by someone else in attendance when it accidentally fired, tragically striking 6-year-old Quaid Walker Teal in the forehead, killing him. Tupac's stepbrother, Maurice Harding, would be arrested for the killing, but no charges were ever filed. Tupac settling a wrongful death suit with Quaid's mother for between $300,000 and $500,000.
so, I mean, I have a lot of questions in relation to this. Like, one, like, you just dropped your weapon? Like, what?
Apparently, like, he, like, pulled it out, and there's no... I didn't see any real account of exactly why he did it, but from what I've read and what it made it seem, like, he pulled it out, and there was just like, fuck it, nah, I don't even need this, like, blah, blah, blah.
And then dropped it? Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense. But then it's like, if his stepbrother's the one who picked it up, and then, like, he took responsibility for this, like, this shooting, right? And, like, this little boy died. One, like, why were charges never, like,
Well,
nothing ever happened?
his stepbrother got arrested for it, but that's the only real idea we have of who might have been the person who accidentally shot, because no one was talking.
Okay, so
yeah,
like no one's
yeah.
saying the word. And I mean, because it's pretty shameful to like kill a 6-year-old child.
Yeah. Also in 1992, Tupac would star as gang member Ronald Bishop in the film Juice. On February 16th, 1993, Tupac would release his second album, Strictly for My... well, you get it. Debuting at number 24 on the Billboard Top 200 chart. 1993 would turn into a wild year for Tupac. On April 5th, 1993, Tupac allegedly threw his microphone at rival rapper Chauncey Wynn of the group MAD, then proceeding to attack Wynn with a bat at Michigan State University, being charged with felony assault but pleading down to a misdemeanor. Also around this time, Tupac would allegedly assault director Alan Hughes after being fired from the movie Menace to Society, which Hughes was co-directing with his brother. It was also around this time Tupac would meet up-and-coming New York rapper Biggie Smalls, with the two reportedly becoming friends, with Tupac even acting as a mentor of sorts to a young Biggie.
I think it's so cool that they started as friends. You know, like they started with this like mentorship, because I feel like people skip over that a lot and they're just like, they hated each other. But it's so important to like know that fact. Like they did like each other. Like there was a mentorship there. Like they were cool with each other, you know?
Yeah,
and
Tupac tried to like steer him the right way, at least in Tupac's mind, you know what I mean? From all accounts, they're actually like real tight for a while.
And then it goes south.
Yeah. Later that same year, in October of 1993, two off-duty police officers, brother Mark and Scott Whitwell, were out drinking with their wives in Atlanta, Georgia. As the couples go to cross the street, they are almost struck by an oncoming car. The brothers start to argue with the car's occupants, one of which is Tupac. Mark proceeds to pull out the stolen handgun he was carrying, and the argument escalates into a shootout, with bullets being fired from both sides. Both Whitwells were hit, one in the abdomen and one in the buttocks, but no one was killed. Both Tupac and Mark Whitwell were charged in the shooting, with the charges being dropped against all parties.
First of all, if you guys are like off-duty police officers, like, yes, police officers are like regular people, and when they're not on duty, you know, like they're allowed to go out into the streets and get drunk, like whatever. But like, what are you doing pulling out a gun on someone? Like, that's not cool. Like, you as a police officer, even if you're off duty, should be like held to a higher standard in a sense. You know, like you shouldn't be pulling a gun on people because you almost get hit because you're walking in the road. I mean, what?
Yeah, it just sounds like a bunch of like drunk bros being like, yo, fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? Just, it sounds like a super like bravado, like toxic masculinity bullshit filled.
Yeah, and it's just like, but you're a cop. Like, you shouldn't be pulling a gun on someone. Like, that's not acceptable. And
especially
then, like,
one that's a stolen gun.
Exactly. like where so did you like take where did you take that from? Like is it from evidence? Like is it from like where'd you get it? That's
Yeah,
so messed up.
that's a good point. I actually didn't even think about that.
Yeah, like did you take it from the police station? Because then that's a whole other issue besides you stealing a gun. Like besides you pulling a gun on someone in the streets because you're drunk and walking in the road, like I
And
feel
that's
like that didn't need to escalate.
and that's why Tupac got out of the whole situation, because
Mhm.
there was no way they could charge Tupac and not charge this guy who started the whole thing, basically.
Exactly. And like that's insane, to think about. Like just I don't know, like how do you just I don't know, like I can't imagine just walking out into the street being drunk and like pulling out a gun on someone. But I mean that makes me a different person. like
I think that
as a
makes you a
cop,
normal
I feel like
person.
yeah, I guess it's a normal person, but like as a cop, I don't understand why would you do that? Like they're supposed to have these standards. What are you doing? I don't know.
I mean, there is a reason you see these like protests and stuff that you're seeing these days. So
Facts. Facts on facts. you know, facts don't have feelings.
In November of 1993, Ayanna Jackson accused Tupac and 3 other men of sexual assault, stating that the men had raped her after Tupac had invited her back to his hotel room in the Parker Meridian Hotel. Tupac had always denied the allegations. On November 29, 1994, Tupac was reportedly contacted by manager James Rosemond, who had offered Tupac $7,000 for a verse on one of his client's songs, which Tupac accepted, as his lavish lifestyle and seemingly unending legal troubles had drained Tupac financially. But Tupac would receive much more than he bargained for when he arrived at Quad Studios in New York. As Tupac enters the lobby at about 12:45 a.m. on November 30th, he and his entourage are approached by 3 men who attempt to rob the group at gunpoint. Tupac would not comply with the robbers' demands and was shot 5 times, twice in the head, twice in the groin, and once in the hand. Tupac was taken to Bellevue Hospital Center, where his wounds would be described as non-life-threatening. 3 hours after receiving surgery for the wounds, Tupac would check himself out of the hospital, against the advice of his doctors.
What? like, how does he get shot in the head twice, in the groin twice, in the hand, and like non-life threatening? Like you have to have some crazy luck to get shot in the head twice, not once, twice, and be chilling.
And that's why I like to include these things in these types of videos, because you really start to get a sense of why he feels so invincible, and
Mm-hmm.
why he feel like he can like go and run and do all these things with no repercussion. And
Yeah, because he has had none.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I guess the bullets didn't like go into the head. They're kind of
Like grazed.
like they went into him, but like I guess like it can like almost like bounce off the skull and not like go in if it goes at certain angles or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is a shooting that's depicted in like the Notorious movie.
Mm-hmm. But that's great. Like I can't get over that. Like it just like into his head like twice, and then the groin twice, and then he leaves the hospital like right after surgery against medical advice. He's like, deuces.
Tupac would go on to blame James Rosemond, Sean P. Diddy Combs, and Biggie, among others. Rosemond obviously being the reason Tupac was even at the studio to begin with, and Diddy and Biggie also being at the same studio recording their own tracks, though they have denied any involvement in the robbery. Biggie commented on the situation. It just happened to be a coincidence that he was in the studio. He couldn't really say who had something to do with it at the time, so he just kinda leaned the blame on me. Tupac, however, was convinced that the two were at least aware that the robbery was going to occur. Seemingly confirming Tupac's suspicions, shortly after the shooting, Biggie would release the track Who Shot Ya, which Tupac perceived as Biggie taunting him about the shooting, with Biggie claiming that the song was recorded months before the shooting even happened. In June 2011, convicted murderer Dexter Isaac claimed to prosecutors that he was in fact one of the gunmen in the robbery and shooting at Quad Studios, alleging that James Rosemond was the mastermind, hiring him to carry out the plot.
I feel like it is totally plausible that this guy James Rosemond like was the person behind this shooting, because you think about it and it's like he is like Tupac's obviously like very successful, very successful artist, and you have him coming in to do this song, but it's like that competition is still there in a sense, because like it's not like he works for him, you know? So it's like very possible that I was like, hey, come in, we'll pay you, it'll be great. And then it's like, let's just take him out because then we don't have that competition anymore.
Yeah, and there's also like there's a broader theory on it that like the three of them, Diddy, Biggie, and the Roseman guy, they worked on it together to try to get Tupac out of there as the competition idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much I believe that.
Like, I could feel like I can also, like, at the same time, though, believe that it wasn't them, just because it's like, you think about it, you're going in to this record label, if anyone knew in any sense that it, like, leaked that, like, Tupac was there, or even just, like, in general, like, people could have robbed it just because you know these people with big money are coming in. Like, you have these big artists who are coming in, like, that would be an easy target to rob.
The very next day after the shooting, Tupac would receive the verdict on the sexual assault case, being found guilty on 3 counts of sexual assault. In February of 1995, Tupac would be sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years in prison, being sent to Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York. Tupac's third album, Me Against the World, would be released shortly after on March 14th, 1995, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 charts and going on to be certified double platinum. In 2008, the National Association of Recording Merchandisers, in conjunction with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, included Me Against the World in its list of the definitive 200 albums of all time. By this time, however, Tupac was completely out of money. His mother was on the verge of losing her house, and he needed $1.2 million to bail himself out of prison, while his legal team worked on their appeal for the sexual assault. Tupac would reach out to Death Row Records CEO, Suge Knight, who reportedly promptly sent $15,000 to Tupac's mother, and struck a deal with Tupac for the $1.2 million bail in exchange for a 3-album deal for Tupac on Death Row Records. Having no other options, Tupac agreed, being released from prison on October 12th, 1995.
I feel like this was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Bad. I mean, I know he had no other options. Like, I understand, like, his mom needed help. He obviously didn't want to be in jail anymore. And, like, I get that. But, like, Suge Knight's bad energy, bad vibes. Like, I don't think he should have done it, you know?
Yeah, but when your mom's about to lose her house and some guy goes, hey, here's $15,000, save her house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, back up against the wall. I totally understand why he did it. But, like, now, hindsight, like me in 2020, I'm like, don't do it. It's a trap.
Tupac would release his 4th album, his debut for Death Row, All Eyes on Me, on February 13th, 1996, just 4 months after his release from prison. Once again, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard Top 200 chart, eventually going 10 times platinum. On the B-side for one of the album's singles, How Do You Want It, Tupac would release the song Hit 'Em Up, a diss track against Biggie, in which Tupac makes the claim that he had slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. The song is widely believed to be the turning point in the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, leading the highly volatile situation to turn violent. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac traveled to Las Vegas to attend the Heavyweight World Championship match between Mike Tyson and Bruce Sheldon at the MGM Grand Casino, arriving at around 8:30 p.m. As they were leaving the casino, one of the Mob Piru Blood members, acting as security for Tupac, Trayvon Lane, noticed that a rival gang member of the Southside Crips, Orlando Anderson, who had robbed Lane of his rare Death Row Records chains that were reserved for people deemed worthy by night. Tupac had heard enough and approached Anderson, reportedly asking him, "You from the South?" in reference to the Southside Crips. Before Anderson had time to answer him, Tupac would punch him. Tupac's entourage would also join in, and for about 30 seconds would continue to beat Anderson, before the MGM security would break up the fight. Tupac would then stop in his hotel room, and then proceed to head to a benefit concert he had planned at Club 662, which was owned by Knight. As the convoy of cars that Tupac and his entourage were in pulled up to a traffic light at the corner of Flamingo Road and Koval Avenue, Tupac leans out of his vehicle and begins to talk with 2 women in a vehicle beside them, reportedly asking them to join him at Club 662. While talking to the women, Tupac did not notice the white Cadillac that had pulled up beside his vehicle or the gun hanging out the window. 13 shots rang out in total, Tupac being hit 4 times, twice in the chest, once in the thigh, and once in the hand. Suge would also be grazed by a bullet fragment in the head, but was still able to drive away from the shooting before stopping in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip at the intersection of Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon Avenue. Las Vegas Police Department Sergeant Chris Carroll was first on the scene. As he opens the passenger side door to Tupac's vehicle, he spills out into the street, at this point still conscious. Carroll asks Tupac who shot him, to which Tupac replies, "Fuck you," before slipping into unconsciousness. This would end up being Tupac's final words. Tupac would be taken to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada, where he would be placed into a medically induced coma until the afternoon of Friday, September 13th, 1996, being pronounced dead at 4:03 p.m. While the case is still technically unsolved, there are many theories as to who is responsible for the murder. We're going to take some time to look at a few. Now, for the most part, it is widely agreed that the shooter in the white Cadillac was the man the Death Row Records crew assaulted at the MGM Grand a few hours before, Orlando Anderson. His uncle, Dwayne Davis, even claimed that he and Anderson were in the white Cadillac when the shooting occurred. Though he refused to name the actual shooter, he made a point to mention that Anderson was seated in the backseat and the shot came from the backseat.
So, like, I feel like it makes perfect sense that it would be this guy, right? But yeah. I think it's interesting, like you said earlier, about how, like, he had the chain worthy of, like, death. Like, you had to have the chain if you were worthy of Death Row Records. Like,
right.
And I feel like they're like, you said he stole it, but, like, what if he didn't? You know what I mean? Like, what if this was, like...
Well, no, it was a big thing, like... Apparently there are certain accounts of the MGM Grand fight that showed him like having the chain or like wearing it, like taunting them with it, you know what I mean? Like there's no doubt that he was definitely a member of like
the South.
Like he was under an investigation already by the cops for like multiple murders and such.
Okay, cool.
So
well, not cool, but like...
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. So he really was a South Side Crip, but it wasn't like a plant type thing. Like he was actually one of the rival gang members to the Mob Piru crew that Tupac was rolling with at the time.
Makes sense. I feel like it would make sense for him to do this, especially after like being beat up.
Right.
But it's like I really wonder what like his motives were, like being there. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing up in sorry.
Hi, Renly.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So, like, what is he doing as, like, a Southside Crip? Like, what is he doing up in Vegas? I mean, like, obviously, like, it's the fight, but, like...
For Mike Tyson fights, apparently, like, everyone went to that.
Okay.
So it wasn't weird that he was there, per se.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was what it was. I think just everyone was there for the fight or to gamble or whatever. You know what I mean? I think I read somewhere where he didn't actually attend the fight. Like, you go to where Mike Tyson was having a fight just for the after the fight.
Yes, like all the parties and stuff like that.
Like it was like it made wherever it was the biggest thing in town. In 2002, LA Times writer Chuck Phillips released an article, Who Killed Tupac Shakur? The article made 3 assertions about the case. 1. The shooting was carried out by a Compton gang called the Southside Crips to avenge the beating of one of its members by Shakur hours earlier. 2. Orlando Anderson, the Crip who Shakur had attacked, fired the fatal shots. 3. The murder weapon was supplied by New York rapper Notorious B.I.G., who agreed to pay the Crips $1 million for killing Shakur. Notorious B.I.G. and Shakur had been feuding for more than a year, exchanging insults on recordings and at shows and concerts. Phillips alleges that the Southside Crips wanted vengeance for the beating Tupac and crew had given to Anderson. They would go on to contact Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Wallace, who the gang would provide protection for whenever he was in the western part of the country, also knowing about the ongoing feud with Tupac. Because of this, Wallace had reportedly offered to pay a large amount for the hit on multiple occasions. The Southside Crips were now ready to collect. The article alleges that Wallace was actually in Vegas at the time of the shooting, staying in the MGM penthouse under a false name. The Southside Crips sent members to meet Wallace at his hotel room, where it was reportedly agreed that Wallace would pay $1 million for the hit, on the condition they used Biggie's personal .40 caliber Glock pistol. He cites the East Coast-West Coast rivalry and the song Hit 'Em Up, as possible motives for Wallace ordering the hit. In a follow-up article, Phillips also alleges that the Las Vegas Police Department had mishandled the investigation into Tupac, alleging that the police had completely discounted the MGM Grand assault earlier in the night and failed to follow up on several witnesses who claimed they might have been able to identify one or more of the assassins. Phillips cites the general disdain between police and Tupac and the fact that the Las Vegas Police Department was not accustomed to dealing with street gangs as the reason for the mishandling. The Las Vegas Police Department even refusing help from the Compton gang unit on the case, citing a worry that information might leak. They also failed to follow up on a lead for a rental white Cadillac similar to the one used in the shooting. There is another almost identical theory that puts Sean P. Diddy Combs in Wallace's place, citing once again the East Coast-West Coast rivalry and an attempt to strike before Knight could. Both theories also believe that it was possible that Knight was also meant to die that night, but the second assassination was botched.
I don't think it was Big. I really don't think it was. You know, because it's like, as much as they had a feud, like, really, was it like, I couldn't see, like, yeah, like, they called each other out a lot in songs and had issues at, like, concerts and stuff like that, but I couldn't see him, like, paying the hit for that.
I mean, the guy said he slept with your wife in a public forum.
That's true, but I mean, still, like, I don't know if he did. Like, I don't know.
You're right, but Biggie was also not known as someone who really held his temper.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That is true. I mean, and his songs, like, show that as well, but it's still, like, I don't know. I just don't. Maybe I just, like, have faith because I love him as an artist.
Right.
So I'm like,
hey,
no,
Biggie,
like, never.
Biggie's my favorite rapper, and I would love for that to not be true. And, like, I don't necessarily 100% believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, like, I'm not completely unsold on the theory, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm not either, but I just don't want it to be, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think it is him because I don't want to think it is him. Like, I want to be like, no, he's great.
No, I agree.
And I could also see, like, this Diddy theory, like, also see that 100%. Like, that makes sense.
Another theory presented by now retired LAPD officer Russell Poole alleges that the assassination was an attempted coup by members of Death Row Records, with both Knight and Tupac meant to die, Knight being the current head and face of the label, with Knight himself claiming that this was the cause of the shooting, even claiming Tupac might have just been collateral damage. But it was also believed that Tupac was going to leave the label when his current contract was up. If that was the case, he could be worth more to them dead, as the label had over 200 unreleased songs in their possession, although Tupac's mother, Afeni, would sue for the control of the songs and the mishandling of Tupac's funds by Death Row. Another theory would have similar motives for Suge Knight himself being the perpetrator, also citing video of the MGM Grand fight in which Knight stops and makes a phone call while everyone else was fleeing the scene.
We gotta talk about Suge Knight.
Right.
So I am a firm believer in the Suge Knight theory. Firm. So, like, first he stops to make this phone call while everyone else is running. Who do you think he's calling? Anderson. Having him killed. Second,
I mean, just let me poke a hole in that one. How is he calling Anderson if Anderson is beat up on the ground?
Could have been the uncle related.
No. I get it.
I think he's involved. So, second, I feel like he got grazed to throw him off because, I mean, you have Tupac with 4 bullets in him, so obviously they got somewhat good aim if they could kill Tupac with 4 bullets, and then he gets grazed. He's obviously going to lose a lot of money when Tupac leaves. So he has, like, that reason to do it, and then he can frame everyone else because they could be like, boom, Biggie paid him, boom, Diddy. Like, there's so many other people that he can frame to do it. You know, I really think that it was Suge Knight who was mad that they were leaving the record label and he set it up.
Just a couple little counterpoints to that. This guy, Russell Poole, who originally presented this theory as Suge Knight, has recanted that statement because he believes that it was a coup attempt on Suge Knight. You mentioned the, like, head grazed and, like, they must have good aim. Like, they fired 13 shots, hit 4.
True.
That doesn't really sound like all that great aim to me. And I don't know about you. I don't care how much money I could stand to lose. I'm not putting myself right next to someone in a car getting shot at. There's just too many
True.
variables that could go wrong. So the guy Poole originally presented it as Suge, but then presented all the same evidence minus the phone call, which the phone call is sketchy. I will
Yeah,
say,
the phone call is real
but
sketchy.
he could have been calling a lawyer. He could have been calling more Mob Piru guys just as backup because he understands,
Mhm.
okay, we just did this. There are going to be repercussions. You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
But I feel like why the second, like, you shouldn't have, like, I feel like you should have been running with your squad. Like, those are your people. Like, that's your crew. Like, you should not be, like, telling them to take a phone call. Like, you should be going. You should be
No,
sticking by their side.
I agree. And he did go and meet up with them immediately after. But I don't think that's enough to put it on him because he was a scary figure all in all to begin with. So it's very
Mhm.
feasible that the other members of Death Row wanted him to go away. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because they could
Yeah,
say,
because I mean, he caused a lot of problems for like other artists on the records too. I mean, like you think like Straight Outta Compton, that movie, like you can see in there like his feud with like NWA and like things
right.
like that. Like obviously he caused a lot of issues at all like running Death Row Records. But like I don't know, I've always gotten bad energy. Like I feel like it was him. Like I feel like he had something to do with it.
I definitely view him as someone capable of doing it. I just
Mhm.
keep coming back to the fact that he was right next to him in the car with bullets flying.
Mhm.
He would have so many other opportunities. This is someone Tupac trusted at least enough
Yeah.
to like be in a room with, like, you know what I mean? He would have had so many other opportunities where he wasn't staring down the barrel of a gun.
Mhm.
It just does not make sense that he would put himself in that type of danger.
I just feel like it gives to his flaws like his like deniability in a sense. Like I was there. What do you mean? Like couldn't have been me. Why would I put myself in that? But like
Yeah,
he's
but
crazy enough to do it.
I think the Death Row Records one, like the coup idea, makes the
Mhm.
most sense in my head. It has the most circumstantial evidence. But
Mhm.
it also could just come down to the back to the fact that he beat this guy up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
And
shortly before this, and it would make sense if the guy's mad. It
yeah,
just went after
so
like we can't forget he's a crip. Like
all these theories could all just be complete and utter nonsense theories. That's what it is. You know what I mean? It could just be,
mhm.
hey, you beat up a gang member. When you beat up a gang member, gang shit happens. Like,
Yeah, like that really could be the case. Like cuz it does make sense. Like that's what that could happen, you know?
and
Like
and a lot of times the simplest solution is the solution.
it's crazy. It's weird that we'll like never know
Right.
what actually is going to happen because they didn't take the time to investigate it.
One final theory suggests that the Jewish Defense League might have been responsible, citing FBI documents received via a Freedom of Information Act request revealed that the FBI was investigating the organization for extorting Tupac and other rappers for protection. It is alleged that after Tupac was cremated, members of the group Outlaw Immortals rolled up his ashes into a joint and smoked them.
His friend smoking him is hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know if
Like
that one's true, but that is kind of funny.
that is hilarious. It's like that movie How High, right?
Yeah.
Don't they like smoke the guy and they get smart?
Yeah. They smoke like Ben Franklin. Like,
Maybe they're good at raps for the day. Like,
all right, Jen. So just the story as a whole.
oh,
Give me reactions. Give me
my reaction. Okay. I mean, overall, I mean, I feel like I learned a lot about Tupac. It's kind of crazy, like just like his thought of like invincibility. Like even like in his last kind of night, they beat up this dude, and like I feel like in a situation where you just beat up this guy, like who who's gonna have like that there's gonna be like repercussions for that, like
right.
as like with gangs and things like that, like your confidence to stick your almost whole body out of the car to talk to a girl right after this occurred, like dang, that's
Yeah.
like that shows your invincibility, and like he just kind of took it and was like confident and invincible from the start and like start to finish.
For all these things he went through, he never got any repercussions. Even like the sexual assault thing, which he got convicted for, he only went to jail for like less than a year, a few months, I believe.
Yeah.
Before he got out as they were working on the appeal.
Yeah, and like how does that even happen? Like I'm just gonna pay this money and be out? Like
you can get sentenced, and then if you get approved for an appeal,
mm-hmm.
while they're working on it, the judge can order you be released on bail.
That's pretty crazy. Like I didn't even know that was a thing. So like it's crazy, like he just kind of like never really like paid for his actions in a sense. Like it was always just kind of like
he either threw money at it and like that's kind of why he went broke a couple times and like, got into these desperate situations. That's why I like to include the backstories with these types of things, because you learn how they got into the situation and things start to fall into place a little more, I guess.
Yeah, and exactly, like even like if he never ended up in prison for like the sexual assault, like he wouldn't have been in that spot where he would have needed to go to death row, and then like maybe this wouldn't have happened because there wouldn't have been like a coup with Suge Knight or like any of these little like things. But then you think like, would he be the Tupac we know today? You know, right. So it's kind of like give and
all
take.
These little things kind of led him exactly to this point in some weird way.
So it's like it's cool. It was cool to like learn more about his backstory and like all these other incidences that like have happened. And I mean, him leaving the hospital after 3 hours, like after being shot 5 times, what? You know, just like he really thought he was invincible, and it's pretty cool to like see that.
And how it just kind of led to his downfall eventually.
It really did. It's crazy.
All right, Jen. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Do you have anything you want to say to the people?
Keep listening. Keep learning, you know?
And there you have it, guys. Like I said, a lot more of a complex character than you would have anticipated going in. And I think that's what makes this story still relevant to this day and why people are still looking into it. The truth is, at this point, we can never really know exactly the reasoning for why it happened. But I think, honestly, any of these theories could possibly be credible. Thank you guys so much again for watching this season. This whole project started out very ambitious for me, and it came out a million times better than I was anticipating. So I would like to thank everyone for their support. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button, turn on them notifications, get notified about all things murder music. Be sure to leave us those comments, give us ideas of who we might go into next. Thanks, guys.